Watch this.
Fighting fires on federal lands is something the state of Idaho thinks it can do faster and better. So why haven't they? Because apparently that's already something Idaho can do. We hear a lot about out-of-state money influencing Idaho politics, but there's a lot of influence coming from inside the House under the guise of lobbyists. Who are they and how much influence they have is the focus of the latest transparency bill. It's about that time of year we start seeing weeds popping up. Well, nobody likes them, especially if they're killing crops. And that's exactly what farmers are worried about with pigweed. Wildfires that break out on federal lands have been a bone of contention in Idaho for a few years. After all, the feds control nearly 62% of Idaho land. But this year, lawmakers are hoping to do more than just gripe about it. On the heels of one of Idaho's worst wildfire seasons, with more than 800,000 acres scorched, there is a bill that would allow the state to step in to fight a fire on federal land that is, quote, burning out of control or without adequate precautions, end quote. But isn't that already allowed in Idaho? Aspen Shumpert found out, yeah, it is.
When there is a lightning strike in one tree, instead of sitting around for 5 or 6 days until the fire grows and grows and grows before they go to put it out, we can just send IDL out to put the fire out while it's still burning the one tree.
House Bill 389 would allow the governor to declare an emergency, giving the state authority to fight fires on federal lands when a fire is burning out of control or without adequate precautions. The Bureau of Land Management manages about 12 million acres of federal public lands in Idaho, and Dennis Strange, a BLM fire management officer, explains that a current system already addresses the issues this bill is trying to solve.
We're going to have closest forces respond to that fire all the time, every time. That means no matter who is the steward of the land that the fire is occurring on, whatever agency has the resource closest, that's who's going to take it.
It's called the Master Fire Agreement, and it's been in place for several years, most recently renewed in 2023. It covers all 5 federal agencies and the Idaho Department of Lands.
So if there was a fire on BLM land and IDL had a fire truck or other resources that were closest, they're going to go there. Last year we had a lot of fires going on across the state, and we were able to show that cooperation on the ground right there in real time.
Strange says the Valley Fire last fall outside of Boise was an example of this collaboration.
The fire started on state protected lands, but we had the BLM, we had the Forest Service, we had the state, they provided resources as well, all went to that fire right away. When that call comes in, there is no discussion at dispatch center of like, well, whose land is it, who do we want to send? We're going to send crews to try to make sure we take care of that fire as rapidly as possible.
House Bill 389 also allows the Attorney General to seek reimbursements through civil suits to recover the local funds used to fight the wildfires on federal lands. Strange says the Master Fire Agreement also already outlines reimbursement protocols.
So when there's a fire going on, sending the resources, what we call them, the engines, crews, and aircraft out there. What the Master Agreement really gets to is that we have already pre-agreed on how we're going to bill each other and reimburse each other. So we don't have to go fire by fire and say, are we going to do this? We've already agreed to that.
We reached out to Representative Judy Boyle for a comment on how her bill differs from the existing agreement, but I'll not have heard a response from her yet. Now, this bill has passed the full House. It was supposed to get a hearing on the Senate side on Monday.
Okay.
That got pushed until tomorrow.
I wonder if it's because some of this information is now coming out, because you know how many times we hear in these committees, hey, have you talked to anybody about this, that this might actually affect, or who has some knowledge of this?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times the legislature says, well, no, not really.
Maybe. It also appears Boyle is out today.
Okay.
She wasn't voting on the floor, so maybe that also was a push for tomorrow.
And this agreement, this Master Fire Agreement, this isn't anything new. You said it's several years, but how long has it been?
Yeah, nothing new. It's actually been in place since 2006.
Wow.
It gets reevaluated every 5 years, so not anything new.
Okay, so about 20 years, and again, it's in play already. All right, thank you very much, Aspen. Well, transparency has been the focus of a couple of bills this session, which we believe could be coming to a close soon. The session, I mean, who knows?
Why not?
Let's see. But that might explain why one of those transparency bills passed through committee and the full House in just 2 days, right, Joe? And maybe because it has to do with lobbyists, everybody's favorite. They're
Yes.
always the favorite punching bag at the State House are the lobbyists, right? So what's the idea with this one?
The old green tags. Okay, so here's the idea. It's updating Idaho's sunshine laws, transparency laws, that were drafted in the 1970s, and the idea is to get them to modern times while also elevating lobbyists to a higher level of transparency like campaigns are forced to deal with right now. Just yesterday, a House committee advanced the idea, House Bill 398. A big part, more frequent reporting year-round. Secretary of State Phil McGrain explained the actions in play for registered lobbyists. There's direct lobbying, which you can imagine what that is, but this takes a look at indirect actions to influence lawmakers and their votes.
We've seen just in the past few years a rise in what we're referring to as indirect lobbying. Instead of approaching you directly, Representative Hotsettler, and saying, hey, how can I win your vote or whatnot, instead we're seeing text messages to your constituents or mailers in your district. And so they're not actually appealing to you directly.
So why are they doing this? Well, McGrain says that a major change is just the amount of money being spent now on indirect lobbying. A little more than 24 hours after that committee meeting, the full House took up the proposal on an accelerated agenda, and we heard some concerns from lawmakers about the complicated nature of the bill, how long it is, and fears that small groups or smaller firms could be caught up in more scrutiny.
This bill opens such a Pandora's box that I cannot in good conscience, even under the name of transparency and a good cause and a good heart behind the bill, get a green light on this bill.
I view this legislation as an assault on the First Amendment. I view it as a disenfranchisement of the ordinary person that's wanting to get involved in local government or politics.
Okay, so you heard the concern about the ordinary person. Well, supporters of the idea, they pushed back on those fears, saying that this is about holding registered lobbyists, not average people, accountable, something that campaigns already need to do.
We are asking lobbyists and those who try to influence legislative action and legislators to live by standards similar to the ones we already live by in our campaigns.
This is a transparency bill. We need this. Our public citizens and we don't know where that lobbying is taking place right now year-round.
The sponsor who you just heard from, that's Representative Bruce Gogg, also reiterated there are provisions to exempt groups like homeowners associations and churches. This is again about registered lobbyists. And Brian, the proposal also, it includes universities in terms of reporting their lobbying, direct or indirect. The current law actually doesn't account for that. They also want to make sure that public communication is made by lobbyists and have a paid for by on certain things that are meant to influence lawmakers. And you may be asking, why are lawmakers so passionate about this? They feel like it's an unfair footing having lobbying groups versus campaign rules where there are different rules and different reporting requirements.
Okay, it is interesting. There's been a lot of pushback on these transparency bills this session.
There has been, so we'll see what makes it to the governor's desk.
All right, thanks, Joe.
I just want to ask, what are we trying to accomplish with this?
Something you could ask about a lot of bills, a lot of sessions, so many this year, a lot of bills, by the way. Yeah, okay, so today's topic, as you heard, or you saw right there a little bit of, traditional family values. House Concurrent Resolution 18 wants to make Mother's Day through Father's Day Traditional Family Values Month to raise awareness of the challenges facing traditional families and how, well, apparently they're declining, which is kind of like highlighting a time in history when some people refer to as, well, the good old days, which Representative Alana Rebel says maybe we shouldn't.
Where we talk about how marvelous the marriage rates were and how low the divorce rates were in 1960. Ah, the glory days of 1960. If only we could get back to that time when women couldn't open bank accounts. Maybe that's why marriage rates were so high and divorce rates were so low, because women had absolutely no economic options for independence in the workplace.
If you don't like it, don't celebrate it. If you don't like gay pride, don't celebrate gay pride. We have a single parent day. It's March 21st, as a matter of fact. We have a month for everything under the sun. There's a cheeseburger day. There's a pizza month. This is just allowing people to celebrate something they want to celebrate in their own homes and their own lives. And if you don't like it, don't participate. Simple.
How does one celebrate Traditional Family Values Month? That's the next question I would like to know. Concurrent resolution, by the way, passed the House 60-8, and it now heads to the Senate. Well, nothing screams family values like holes in Idaho's indecent exposure laws. House Bill 270 cleared the Senate yesterday, the last hurdle before heading to the governor's office, and it would close the loophole that allows for biological males with breast augmentation to, well, show those breasts in public. This is a very specific bill. Even the sponsors admit it is directly aimed at what they say was seen at last year's inaugural Canyon County Pride Festival in Nampa. Apparently, there was a transgender woman walking around that festival without a shirt, which is technically not illegal since Idaho's indecency and obscenity law only refers to genitals being exposed in a public place. So House Bill 270 would add developed female breasts or augmented breasts of men to look like women, fake breasts, or sexual toys or products. They're going to add all that to the current law. It's the last part, though, that got some attention on the Senate floor yesterday, and it was handled in two separate ways. First, by the bill's sponsor, Republican Senator Brian Lenny from Nampa.
I've also heard an argument about this bill saying, well, it could penalize people who put certain things on their trailer hitches. I don't think we need to go into that, but there's certain things people put on their trucks that look like part of a male anatomy.
So close, Senator Lenny. The struggle to not say it is real, apparently. But of course, leave it to a woman to just say it.
They call them truck nuts. They're gross, they're offensive, and kids on the road see them. So why wouldn't the police get a call and say, that offends me, pull it off the truck? Because now this bill will allow it.
There it is. Probably the best debate of the year so far. Senator Winthrop said she spoke with police about this, and they told her, indeed, truck nuts would be enforced under this bill. So would anyone who is part of a bachelorette party who chooses to wear similar representations on a necklace? Not according to Lenny, though.
Again, I think that's kind of fantasy land. I don't think that's going to happen because the bill is referencing people exposing themselves or using sex toys in a lewd way in public. So no one's going to go after a trailer hitch.
Except the bill does say specifically a person is guilty of a misdemeanor if the person who willfully and lewdly either exposes his or her genitals or displays toys or products intended to resemble male or female genitals in any public place, just to resemble it and just have it exposed. So does hanging such things off a trailer hitch or around one's neck constitute willfully and lewdly? Senator Lenny says no. He doesn't think it's going to happen. Doesn't think it's going to happen. Senator Winthrop says it will, and she says law enforcement agrees with her. What will Governor Little say? Likely not truck nuts, but he will have a say on the bill after it officially arrives to his office.
It's been 36 months since his last public town hall, according to his website. So I appreciate you dragging him out of the shadows and letting folks ask questions.
Well, hundreds of protesters lined up outside the Riverside Hotel in Garden City last week, where Senator Mike Crapo spoke at a forum hosted by the Boise Metro Chamber. You had to be registered to get in, and you also had to pay to attend, and it was not open to the public per se. Protest organizers on Facebook claim Senator Crapo hasn't made himself available to take questions or talk with his constituents in person for years, and they want to be heard by their elected officials about legislative overreach impacting human rights like health care and immigration. Today, though, he took questions in a virtual town hall, if you can call it that, from people who called in, something that had been planned for about 2 months. You couldn't see him, but you could certainly hear him over the phone or Facebook Live. Idahoans on the call were mostly concerned about Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security cuts on a federal level, wanting to know where Crapo stands on those issues.
I back exactly what President Trump has said, and that is that he doesn't support, and I don't support, any cuts to benefits in Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security, for that matter. Now, having said that, I know there are some savings that can be found from what are considered to be excessive expenditures that do not impact benefits. And there are some who are saying that in the categories of waste, fraud, and abuse, there may be some savings that can be achieved. But if that's the case, those savings should be utilized to help Medicare or Medicaid beneficiaries. So I'll just tell you, I don't think there is support in Congress to cut the benefits.
The town hall, virtual town hall, lasted about 50 minutes and then he couldn't get to every question, of course. There were still more than 40 people that called in that did not get any questions answered. Hundreds commenting on Facebook Live as well. At the end of the town hall, Crapo encouraged anyone who still had a question just to reach out to his office directly. You can find pigs and you can find weeds on farms, but combine the two and you get a wacky weed that is really worrying farmers. You know what's worrying us? Whether your message is going to arrive in time to share at the end of the show. Right now is the perfect time to tell us what you think. Text us your questions, your comments, and your concerns. The number, 208-321-5614. As always, include your name and the hashtag #the208. Well, with the weather lately, your grass may already be growing in your yard, but you've also probably noticed the weeds popping up too, maybe in the grass and the cracks. For homeowners and farmers, this is the time where you just grab the herbicide, or as many people know it, Roundup, and try to keep those weeds under control. But for some weeds, well, it doesn't even seem to faze them. They've evolved enough to survive weed killer. As Hunter Funk found out, there is a weed known as, well, pigweed, and scientists have found out it can fight off like 16 rounds of this stuff?
Yeah, it's incredible, right? This weed, a pigweed, also known as Palmer amaranth, is resilient. And Idaho didn't know it existed until 2021, and it's thanks to Albert, a University of Idaho weed specialist who figured it out. Well, it was in surrounding states, Utah, Washington, Oregon, and Albert says he was surprised to learn it wasn't detected in Idaho. After educating people in 2021, it's now invading nearly 7,000 acres in Idaho. Albert says, depending on the crop, there can be some herbicide programs that will work to kill the weed, and paying attention to what's growing around you is important.
The best thing you can do, prevent them from going to seed. Because there is no seed and there's no weed. That said, this can produce up to 500,000 seeds per plant. And so you don't need that many to have a problem on your hand. And so, and the seed can stay in the soil for about 5 years on average. And so we tell people that apply these herbicide programs. And if you don't do anything now, your long term, you're going to have a huge problem.
Now, this weed can grow 3 inches a day and can grow taller than corn. He says his concern is how it will ruin the crops for farmers and hurt their yields. Coming up at 6, we're going to look at what farmers can do before it's too late. And Brian, these weeds are popping up all across southern Idaho. One farmer in Glenns Ferry even had to cut down or till up all of his farm.
Yeah, okay, so herbicides, but what about like people want to be organic? Is it, I mean, they can pull that stuff out too, right?
It's just to be by hand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
All right, thanks, Hunter. Well, a judge is not going to stop Idaho's library law from being enforced, but you will have to stop soon at the light soon to be going in at the Banks-Loman intersection along Highway 55. Abby Wilt tells us more in today's 411.
A federal judge decided not to temporarily block Idaho's library law. The law gives parents the option to file a complaint with a library about a book in the kids section they find inappropriate. The library has 60 days to move it. If they don't, people can sue the library for $250 and other damages.
Right after the law went into effect on July 1st, a coalition of private Idaho schools, libraries, and parents sued Idaho officials to stop the law. They said it violates their First Amendment rights and the 14th Amendment for fundamental library interest of parents. But today, the judge denied the coalition's request to stop the enforcement of the law, and she took some of the plaintiffs off the case. This is one of 2 lawsuits for the library law.
The public has really been asking for a traffic signal.
And they're finally getting one. The Idaho Transportation Department started building the new traffic light at the intersection of Highway 55 and Banks-Loman Road. This will replace the flaggers they used on some Sundays and holidays. ITD hopes to have the traffic signal done by this spring, possibly by Memorial Day. Some big names are coming into town for this year's Albertsons Boise Open, happening on August 14th through the 17th. Drumroll please, Darius Rucker, Leonard Skinnard, and Brothers Osborne will take the stage after each day of competition at Hillcrest Country Club. Tickets are on sale now, which include admission to the tournament and the concert. You can find a link to buy those at ktvb.com. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Wilt.
All right, Southern Idaho basking in its first 70-degree day of the year. We're at 73 in Boise. We've been up to 74. That will likely be our official high temp today. Twin Falls, sunny skies and low 70s. In the mountains, we're flirting with 60 in Sun Valley. So snowmelt likely rapidly accelerating because of the warm temperatures. So rising rivers and streams a concern for the next several days. Not a concern, anything interrupting your evening plans. Beautiful conditions for the next several hours. We'll still be in the 70s and upper 60s at sunset, still at 10 or 11 o'clock tonight, around 60 degrees. So if you haven't planned dinner on the patio yet, It's not too late. Perfect evening for that. Record-challenging warmth sticks around tomorrow. We may see our 4th 80-degree day in Boise ever in the month of March. But as this system starts to make its approach, we will likely see some thunderstorms bubbling up late in the day, potentially into the overnight hours, mostly favoring the west central mountains and the Treasure Valley tomorrow afternoon and evening. Something to be aware of if you're heading to Treefort to take in opening day or just heading out to enjoy the warmth. Be weather aware. We'll have a very dynamic atmosphere tomorrow. Not everyone will get hit with storms, but enough that we have first alert weather conditions in place for tomorrow evening. Then we have a cold front that comes in and will knock our temperatures down to 70 on Thursday, back to seasonable conditions by the end of the work week.
All right, let's get to your comments. Kate in Meridian has something for Senator Crapo. She says, you're so close to getting it, Mike. Musk and his goons aren't getting their cuts approved by Congress. They're doing whatever they want with no checks or balances. That's what your constituents want you to address at an open public town hall, not something you have to pay to get into, which, by the way, was put on the Boise Chamber of Commerce, not necessarily put on by him, so it's a little bit different. In the least regulated state, we have a legislature that creates laws at one of the highest rates in history. It's a shame most of the laws are redundant or just add no value at all, says Larry. Is there a law against political nuts, asked Walt from Nampa, or as he like to call them, maybe truckticles? I think I like the other one.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.